Good evening, buenas noches, and thank you for tuning in. On behalf of the locally based, independently owned bookstore Books and Books in Miami, Florida, and in partnership with Miami Book Fair, it is my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual evening with Teresa Dovalpage to discuss Death Under the Perseids, published by Soho Crime. Teresa Dovalpage was born in Havana, Cuba. She earned her BA in English Literature and an MA in Spanish Literature at the University of Havana, and her PhD in Latin American Literature at the University of New Mexico. She is the author of 13 other works of fiction and 3 plays, and is the winner of the Rincón de la Victoria Award and a finalist for the Herald Award. To moderate tonight's conversation, we're joined by Alex Segura, an acclaimed award-winning writer of novels, comic books, short stories, and podcasts. He is the author of the upcoming noir novel Secret Identity, coming in March from Flatiron Books. By day, he is a senior vice president of sales and marketing at Oni Press, with previous stints at Archie Comics and DC Comics. He is a Miami native who is now based in New York City. Throughout this evening's broadcast, you're invited to ask questions by using the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen, and you can order your copy of Death Under the Perseids from Books and Books below. Thank you for supporting indie bookstores. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests to the virtual stage.
Hi, Teresa. How's it going?
Muy bien. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Of course.
Gracias, Alex, for moderating, for talking to me today. I'm a little nervous.
No, don't be nervous. This will be fun.
Gracias.
No, gracias a ti. I'm so excited to be here in this virtual room to talk about your amazing new book. And thanks to Books and Books for having us, one of my favorite bookstores, period. I grew up in Miami, and I always made a point of visiting Books and Books and just spending time there. It was like my home away from home. So even though we can't be together in person, this is as close as we can get to that real thing. But it's really nice to be here.
And maybe the 2022 book fair, we will be in person, and you will be presenting Secret Identity there.
Yeah, I hope so. Here it is. Do you have your book? Show us the cover. You don't have it?
Buena idea, ¿verdad? Sí.
It's excellent. So for the people who might not be familiar with the book, can you just give us the high concept and just talk us through what the book's about?
Okay, well, it's about a cruise to Cuba. A free cruise that Mercedes, who is Cuban like me, and is married to an American professor, well, they get 2 free cruise tickets to Cuba. And at first, Mercedes is a little suspicious because she's like, I don't know how I got these free tickets, pero tú sabes, gratis hasta las bofetadas, como dice mi amiga Raquelita, ¿no? So everything that is free is welcome. So así que they decide to go. But the problem is that as soon as they get on the ship, she starts seeing people from her life in Cuba. She sees a former professor from the University of Havana and the literary agent of her former boyfriend. And she's like, what a coincidence, no, that we are all here. And then the problem starts when people, these ghosts from the past, start to disappear. Y ahí es cuando se forma el problema.
It's a fantastic book, and I had so much fun reading it. I got to read it early, which was amazing. Y cuando estuviste pensando, when you were thinking about the setting of the book, what made you want to do it on a cruise ship?
Well, I love cruises. Anyway, my husband and I have taken several cruises, and I love the setting. And I thought, wow, that's kind of like the luxurious.
Yeah, it's like a lot. I got an Agatha Christie vibe from it too.
Sí, tú sabes, ¿no? Hay que aprender de los maestros. Sí. Entonces, I thought, well, yeah, it's a place that you are together, you cannot escape. But at the same time, well, they get to Cuba, and things start to happen there too. So it's combining the idea of the trip, and then later a little tour of Havana. So that's something I always like to do with my books. I like to take readers in tours of La Habana, donde yo nací, where I was born and where I lived until I was 30 years old. So I know pretty well now. So I take the readers from Cathedral Square, lugares, touristy places, no lugares turísticos, to places that people may not know too well, like el Copelia es uno de ellos, y también en la Quinta de los Molinos. This would be translated like the Mill Park. Bueno, pues no, pero it's a big botanical park in the center of Havana, where several key things of the story happen. And I thought to bring that in because I used to live very close to el Jardín Botánico, la Quinta de los Molinos, but also because it is a mysterious place with lots of trees and ponds. It has this mysterious vibes. I thought, that. And people can go and look at it when they go to Havana and say, mira, aquí está la Quinta, ¿no?
Yeah. No, it made me want to go explore just with the book as my guide. But before we continue, I just want to remind everyone, we're obviously here to celebrate the launch of the book, and you can buy a copy if you just push that giant green button that's under both our heads, and that'll get you a copy sent to you from Books and Books. And also, at the end of my Q&A with Teresa, we'll have your questions. We'll answer your questions. So just click on the Ask a Question button that's under me, and that'll queue up your question for this amazing author. One of the other things that resonated with me about the book are the characters. I always put a little bit of myself in every character I write. There's always a little bit of Miami, a little bit of Cuban American culture, and I got that sense from your book too. So can you walk us through the characters and who they are and how they play off each other?
Yeah, well, Mercedes is actually not too much based on me, a little bit, but not too much.
A little bit.
But sí, poquito, no, it's more based on several people I know. But something that has surprised me a lot is that several reviews already talk about her as an unsympathetic character. Yo, ay, de verdad, no, she's so pragmatic.
I liked her.
No, but yeah, so she's Cuban born. She was born at the beginning of the special period. So that is probably what made her that pragmatic and a little bit of a material girl. And so she lives in Cuba until she's 20 years old, and she marries an American professor and goes to Florida, first to Miami and then Gainesville.
Big change.
Yeah, and her boyfriend, el hombre de su vida, como lo llama ella, es Lorenzo. And so he's kind of a character that appears but doesn't appear. And that's the boyfriend that she always thinks about. And then the husband, of course, doesn't like the idea of this boyfriend, even though the boyfriend is dead, but the husband knows about it. And es que, bueno, no, tú sabes, el triángulo amoroso, ¿no?
Sí.
The love triangle. And our characters are based on people that I have met. Well, Nolan, Mercedes' husband, is really a composite.
Composite.
Composite of several professors that I have met. And sí, eso tú sabes, muy académico, ¿no? Very pompous.
Yeah,
and,
very egotistical.
Tú sabes, sí. Ay, no, hombre, the pontification. La pontificación, eso, tú sabes. Bueno, so I try to put a little bit of that in him. And then Candela, her friend, appears in several of my books. Y también she's also based on a friend. So, a ver, ¿qué más te digo? Y Mamina, okay, Mamina is another character that is very much based on my abuela, my grandmother. So, pues, of course, she spoils Mercedes because that's what abuelas do, ¿verdad?
That's what abuelas do, yeah.
¿Qué sería de nosotros sin las abuelas, no?
Claro. I mean, I love all your books, but this one stands out in a special way, and I love the momentum. Like, each book seems to get stronger and more, you try new things, you change things up. So how would you contrast this new book with your previous novels?
I think I know a little better what I'm doing now. Because when I started with Desk Something Through the Kitchen, that was my first mystery, I didn't know much about mysteries. I kind of stumble around and moon detective and this and that just to see. But here I don't have any detective as such, and I feel more comfortable with not having a detective.
It's liberating.
See, I kind of realized that I was more like, I wanted to hear Mercedes' voice. So that's why it's told in the first person. instead of the third person who is Padrino and Marlene, the detective. It was more like my voice, I thought, in this case. En mi voz autoral, diríamos en español, ¿no? It's more, I feel more mature in that sense. Bueno, ya estoy más que madura como persona, pero bueno, como escritora de novelas policíacas, so as a mystery writer, I think I'm maturing. Actually.
How would you describe the tone and the style of the book for someone who wants to know more beyond just the characters and the plot?
Yeah, it's light. The tone, I would say, is that light and así pues.
We need that, yeah. We need light novels.
Spunky, vaya.
Yeah.
Porque Mercedes, I see her as a spunky girl. Like she likes to, su manera de hablar, no? Like I said, she's pragmatic, she's material, and she doesn't like to read. That's one thing that I say. So I kind of use that to some ironic touches in the story. But in general, I would say that the style is light and I would say it's a fast read. Pero bueno,
I read it very quickly. I enjoyed it. It was very breezy and fun, and I was, the plot was very strong. It just kept me turning the pages, which is what you want. Yeah, of course. Talk to me about getting Speedo. What was your inspiration for the book? Like, you talked a little bit about the cruise ship, but what made this the novel you had to write next?
It just came to me. I was actually in a cruise in France. Was this one, and the story came to me. And then there are some references that I cannot get into now because it would be revealing too much to French literature. And I was reading one of the books that I mentioned, and I said, vamos a ponerle un twist cubano a esto, ¿no? And that's how it kind of started.
Yeah.
And I like to take people to Cuba, como te decía, it's what I want. I want to share my culture and Cuba, and I wanted to share it in a fun manner. So that was also how the idea came. And let me tell you, I don't know precisamente lo que me estás preguntando, but in Amazon has the book listed under travel books for the travel guides for the Caribbean. I'm like, oh, dale, qué cosa.
What? Yeah. I mean, you definitely learn a lot just reading the book. For my Pete Fernandez books, I only sent him to Cuba once, and that was the most I wanted to make it so accurate. That part of the book took the most research. But you want it to ring true. You don't want it to feel fake.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I had to go and Google some things because I went back to Cuba.
Well, el tiempo pasa, like things change.
Muchacho, that's the thing. And there were some things that I asked my mother, who still lives there, but a couple of times I had to go to Google and say, let me see the location of el Botanical Park, La Quinta de los Molinos. I knew it was like 3 or 4 blocks away from my house, but the two entrances and all that, I had to go to Google Earth, make sure that I was, because somebody's going to notice, te digo, nadie nota lo bueno, pero sometimes you make a little mistake y te dicen, ay, no, pero mira, esto sí no está hecho, o sea, no, that.
Yeah, they give up on the book. That's when they give up on the book.
Sí. Entonces, bueno, so this is one thing that I do like to share is La Habana, my love for La Habana. And pues, esa es una de las motivaciones, yeah, that's another motivation too.
Yeah, no, it's important. And it's also important to, I mean, for me, it's important to reflect my story even through my characters. And I see that you do it too. And it's not so much about style. It's not about whether it's light or my stories are dark, they're noir, and yours, there's crime and it's a little bit lighter, but we're still talking about our experiences through our characters. You know, all my main characters are Cuban American, born in Miami or from Cuba, and they have that experience, whether they were born in the 70s or, whatever. They just have that's the through line. And I think it's important for us to speak to what we've lived. And I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, it's easier for me actually to talk about Cuba than to talk about Taos. And I lived in Taos almost 9 years, and I love the place. I call it my second home, because it was where I spent so much time, and I love the place and the people. But it's still so difficult for me to write about Taos and feels secure, like lo que
Mhm.
estoy diciendo es verdad. Well, if I write about Cuba, even if I have to go to Google Earth to make sure that the place is still there,
Lo conoce todavía. You still
lo
know it.
conozco todo. And yeah, and having the settings, no, the University of Havana, well, the Facultad de Artes y Letras, where I did my master's, is also setting there. And yeah, it was easy to do that. So, and I knew that what I was writing about was perfectly true, like the staircase and where the library was located and all that. So, and of course, the National Library, la Biblioteca Nacional José Martí. So these are all places that I know so well. And I was just thinking about, okay, even I started writing short story, setting towns, and I didn't have the same sense of I know the location well enough to take people around, even if I lived there for 9 years. It's that thing. So,
No, yo tenía la misma cosa with New York. This Secret Identity is my first New York novel. Like Pete goes to, but Secret Identity is the first one that's mainly set in New York, and she's still from Miami. She still has that connection to Miami because it's hard. It's hard to really, even if you live somewhere for a long time, you don't know it as much as you know your home.
How long have you been in New York?
Since 2006. So.
Oh wow!
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
And this is your first book that is set in New York, Secret Identity?
Yeah.
But why in the 70s?
Because the 70s were a great time, probably the low point for comics. That's when people thought comics were just like disposable entertainment. Not like today where you walk to the movies and you see the Avengers, you see Batman, it's all like a big thing. Back then, people thought comics was a dying industry. So I thought it was interesting to juxtapose that time with Carmen's passion and love of comics and knowing in the back of your head, these are going to be big, in 45 years or whatever.
5 years. I can't wait to read the book.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, I'll send it to you for sure. I guess we've both been writing around the same time, and I wonder if you feel this way too, but I feel like there's been such a great change just in our genre or our industry in terms of diversity. Like, I don't think this would have happened like 10 years ago, like two Cuban and a Cuban American writer talking to each other about their books, because we would have been so rare, but I see now there's so much more diversity, and it's so important. And I'm so happy to see that. And it's, I hope it's a ongoing change, of writers getting those opportunities. But I'd love to hear what you've seen change over the last, decade of writing.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely a great time to be a Latinx writer.
Yeah.
For sure. And the attention that we get, and the people that are curious about us. Before, I felt like an oddity sometimes. Ay, pero usted es la escritora cubana. And then people wouldn't recognize me. The stereotype about the Cuban writer was so prevalent that they.
Bueno, cuando nos conocimos, like we were on that panel in Miami Book Fair, which is in Miami, very Cuban, but it still felt like I'd found somebody else who was in the same boat, like another Cuban American writer who writes crime novels. We don't see each other all the time.
That's right. I hope that we have muchos más. Yes, because things have changed. I mean, since I started publishing in 2004, I have seen a good change. And the last few years, especially, and this year, I think this year has been special.
Yeah.
And so all the attention to diversity, and that people are more curious and pay more attention to us. Good. ¿No?
Yeah, good. You wrote this article on Crime Reads yesterday that I thought was fantastic, because I thought about it a lot too with Secret Identity. I asked my editor to please not italicize any of the Spanish, like let the Spanish be part of the book. But I also sometimes, when I have the character speaking in Spanish, I think, well, is this too much? Like, is this going to turn off like an English reader? But I love what you said about it, so I love to hear you talk about it a little bit here. Yeah,
well, I have to thank my editor, Yesanira Venecia, because she was so good. I was afraid of Spanish. Like I said in the article, I said, I know if I put too much, people are going to say, ay, pues no, bueno, entiendo nada. But she really encouraged me so much. Said, no, let's put it in Spanish. Even the first sentence of the book.
Yeah, that's great.
Las lágrimas de San Lorenzo. And then of course, convey the meaning in English somehow. No, you have to go back to it and darle una vueltecita. So
You have to
people
find the
don't get lost.
balance.
Yeah, but I love being able to have, mi idioma, how, especially the characters that are Cuban born, like me, cómo dirían las cosas en español. And of course, groserías, but words cannot be translated. No, ¿qué podemos hacer?
No.
So how do you solve the problem with el español? Lo pones todo sin itálicas. So
todos sin itálicas, pero como dijiste ahora, you explain it. You say it in Spanish, and then you find a way to explain what they said if you need to. If not, like somebody, people are smart. Readers are smart. They can figure it out. And I think readers appreciate that too. They don't want to be dumbed down. They don't want the content to be dumbed down or kind of like over-explained either. So I just, if it feels natural, I let it go.
Yeah. And why did you decide not to use italics? Because that's something that I have been thinking about.
Yeah, I think it puts undue emphasis on the words. It makes you almost imagine the words like someone's imitation of Spanish or someone's, if it's just in there, you read it in your natural mental voice as opposed to y después, like instead of like overemphasizing the Spanish. But I could, everyone does it, whatever was comfortable. I just knew that I wanted it to just flow as one thing. Because that's me, like where I'm, there's Spanish and English and it's all together and it's like this conversation. We're just switching around and it's natural and yeah. So. Yeah,
that's something. And then the things that I was discussing with, my friend Raquelita, she's my alpha reader. No. And I always give her my books to read first. And pobrecita, she's so wonderful.
What a friend.
No. Y me decía, bueno, but I wanted to emphasize one word. And she said, but you are already using italicas for Spanish. So if you put a word in English in italics, it's going to confuse the reader. You hear, ¿verdad?
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
So see.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to remind everyone that you can pick up a copy of Death Under the Perseids right now. Just clicking that green button that's under us. It's a fantastic book. And if you have any questions for Teresita, you can ask them right here and push the Ask a Question button. And this has been so fun so far. I hope, this is the official launch, right?
Pues sí.
Wow, yeah, I'm honored.
It's like, ándale, pues.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the writers that have inspired you. Like, what are, who are the writers, when you decided I'm going to try to do this myself, were there writers that you were reading that you felt like, maybe someday I can try to achieve that, or these are like the goals or the dream books,
Sí, bueno, in Spanish, so aquí tenemos en español y en inglés.
Sí.
My all-time favorite writer is Leopoldo Alas. Clarín is a 19th century writer, and his book La Regenta, it inspired me so much that I wrote a novel called La Regenta en La Habana, which is kind of a take on el libro original. So I love Benito Pérez Galdós too. I really like a lot the realistic writers in the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, having my inspiration in Spanish. Now, in English, I love Anne Tyler. And the first time that, what was the first book I read was not The Accidental Tourist, was The Amateur Marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I was fascinated by the way she presented families and all the conflicts, but in such an engaging way that then after that I had to buy all her books.
Yeah.
And the last one was Dig Into America, about adoption, was just adorable. There are books that are discomforting. Now, just recently, I read The Authenticity Project by a British author, Claire Pooley.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a feel-good book.
Oh, good.
Es como una caja de chocolates. You feel you are eating chocolate, algo bien sabroso while you're eating. It gave me the desire to write something super nice. No, esta vez no crímenes, no muertos, no nada. It's a feel good
sin muertos.
We need that, no? We definitely need that.
Mm-hmm. I want to hear a little bit about your process, your writing process. You've written I mean, you've written so many books. Is each one different, or do you have a system? Like, how do you have to do so many words a day? I have to sit by the computer. I have my system, which is just to write whenever I can, because I have 2 little kids, and whenever there's a minute, I try to write. And I try not to make it too special. Like, I don't have to have certain things. Like, I just have the laptop and I start working. But I want to hear about do you outline? Like, what's your routine like?
Yeah, I generally have an outline, very, very simple, just to guide me when the book comes through me. I put it somehow in the computer somewhere on paper, or so the idea doesn't go away, no se asuste y se vaya meneando la colita, no, que se quede ahí. And then after that, I probably write every day if I have the time, but I can say nothing special. I don't need any conditions for this. Here in my office at work, that's when I have free time in my office.
You don't need your specialty or la musiquita.
No, yeah, un cafecito
Sí, un
if I have
cafecito.
my coffee, that helps. Or if I don't have the cafecito, ni modo, no? O sea, I worked for several years in Taos as I would say not a reporter, a columnist for the Taos News. And that helped me a lot to just write. You can not wait for the inspiration when you are a journalist, you just write. So that's what I do now. I try to write every day a little bit just to keep in contact with the story. And what I do when the manuscript is finished, the first version, I said the vomit draft. I send it to my alpha reader, 20 pages. Every time I go, okay, léete estas 20 páginas, ¿no? Qué sé cuánto, I implement the changes that she suggests and then go back. And then after the second version, it's not the vomit draft anymore. It's now
it's stronger.
Then I give it to another reader. I have a Cuban friend. Well, she's almost Cuban American because she has spent so many years here. Her name is Viviana. And then she was also very good, giving me advice and feedback about Perseids. And so I have a few friends who are kind enough to read the books and give me feedback, and I implement whatever. Sometimes I agree, otras digo, no, chicos, no, pero ¿cómo me vas a decir eso? Pero bueno, así lo vamos haciendo. And finally, when the manuscript is more or less okay, like in 6 or 7 or 8 months, I send it for the first time to my editor, and then I start working with her. And of course, there are always more changes.
Has she been your main editor the whole time you've been with Soho?
No, actually, she was my editor for Perseids. And no, before I have had 3 editors, all of them maravillosos, wonderful in Soho. I started with Soho in 2004, actually.
Yeah, Soho's amazing. I love them. They're great people. Were there any challenges with this book that were different that you weren't expecting? For me, there's always a different. Every book is hard in its own way. You know, there's always a unique challenge. Like the first book is hard because you've never done it before. The second book is hard because of something else. So what was the challenge with this book?
Yeah, well, here at first it was to get the right voice. I started in the third person, and then I said, no, it has to be a first person story. And that was one thing, just deciding on the tone and the voice was a challenge. I think unraveling the story and the ending, especially when you don't have a detective, it's the main character that has to put it together. That was a bit of a challenge, but even it was more difficult than the other 3 in that sense. I felt better. I felt that it came out better than having the all-knowing detective coming and explaining everything. And I don't know, that was it. It was a challenge, but it was a challenge in a good way.
But it worked out. It read.
I hope so.
Yeah, it did. It does. Spoiler, it does work out really well. It's a great book. So I have 2 more questions, and then we have some reader questions or some questions from the people attending. But just remember, you can buy the book. Just click on the green button below and get a copy. And are you going to Miami anytime soon, or?
Espero que sí. I'm hoping to be there next year sometime.
Yeah, me too.
Porque cómo uno puede vivir sin Miami, ¿verdad?
Claro, yeah.
Pues sí. And just hoping that we can travel a little easier.
I know. Yeah, it's been so hard. So what are you reading now for fun or for research or that you want to shout out?
No, ya yo no leo por research nada.
No, no, no.
Desde que me gradué, research nada. Pero estoy leyendo The Sober Diaries by Claire Cooley, the same British author that I was talking about the Authenticity Project. Now this is about how she stopped drinking, and it's fascinating. It's a memoir. I love memoirs. And then because I had already read a fiction book by her, I can see how she used a lot of it on live in the Authenticity Project, and it's like, ay, mira que bien lo hizo, ¿no? Because we learned it from other authors, ¿no? Agarramos cositas aquí, cositas allá, and I thought it was fascinating how she took some things from her own life that she had.
Wow.
Y eso está maravilloso. I really recommend the Authenticity Project, a novel, and the Sober Diaries, again, the author is Claire Cooley.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. That sounds fantastic. All right, let's take this question. We have a question.
Tenemos preguntas. I always tell my students, preguntas, por favor.
This is from Mariana. I've heard that writing the middle of a novel is the most difficult part. What strategies do you use to write the middle? Excuse me. What do you use to write the middle?
Right the middle. Yeah, because there is sometimes, Mariana is right, there is always a moment in the middle that you can feel that the story dies, that something is not working. And it always happens in the middle. Like if the story has 300 pages, in 150, ahí viene la cosa. Bueno, what I do is I go back to the beginning and I start reading again from the beginning as if it were done. Pero qué sé yo, qué sé cuándo. And by the time I get to 150 or whatever, then I have gotten more energy, más combustible, ¿no? Más gasolina.
Yeah, momentum.
Para seguir. Yeah, but what helps me is to go back to the beginning and start just redoing everything and getting more ideas. Pero así mismo es very, very true.
Yeah, that's a great question. The middle is the hard part. That's because the fun part is thinking of the idea, and the very fun part is typing the end. And revising is like you're painting the house that you've already built. But can you talk a little bit about what you have coming up next? Can you say anything about what you're working on?
Sí, bueno, the way Perseids ends is that Mercedes is thinking about going back to Cuba to look for her mother. Now, the idea is, bueno, ¿qué pasa con la madre, no? Then there has to be a second book for that. And that's the one I'm working on right now. Sí,
that's great. Perfecto.
Y tengo un título working title, Last Scene in Havana. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it, but it's about a life in Cuba during the 80s. That's when Mercedes' mother used to live there, and combined with contemporary Cuba in 2018 or 19, that's when Mercedes goes back. But yeah, I try to give that atmosphere of the 80s because it was a fun time for me. I was a young person, was a teenager, a little more than a teenager, and so yeah, the 80s were a fun time, I think, to be in Havana, and I try to capture all of that there.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to read that. That sounds amazing. Let me see. If anyone has a question, now's your time to ask. If not, did I miss anything? Was there anything you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about?
No, creo que es todo lo que teníamos que hablar y conversar y chismear. Now I want to read your book.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you. Send me your address. Bueno, Teresita, this was amazing. I'm so happy and honored to be able to talk to you about your book, and I'm so glad that we got to, of course, anytime. And I'm so honored to do it at Books and Books, and just make sure you buy a copy because now's your chance. You can push that giant button below and get a copy of the book. And if there's anything else you want me to ask, I'm happy to chat about it. Oh, there's another question. Here we go. From Raquel says, I would like to say that your alpha reader is here. She said, I would like to say that working as Teresita's alpha reader is a gift from her to me. Being part of the process of her novels is the most interesting and fun thing. It's like if the author was taking you inside where her novel is happening. That's a great comment.
Ay, gracias, Raquelita, qué linda.
Qué
Muchas
chévere.
gracias. Sí.
All right. Well, I think Books and Books is going to come back on, but thank you so much, Teresita. This was a pleasure.
Muchas gracias.
Of course.
And muchas gracias a los dos. Thank you both so much. Thank you everyone who tuned in. There was one other question right now.
Oh,
Sorry.
let's ask it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
The only ones I see, I just see the ones that were there.
Okay. Oh, Mariana.
Oh, no,
there's
another one.
Yes.
She said, I've noticed that you write very strong female characters. How would this affect your male audience, if at all?
Pues I don't know. I wish I had an answer, pero no sé, pues los hombres a lo mejor lo leen y dicen, pues no sé. Realmente I don't have any idea. I don't know how to answer that question. So,
I don't think it should affect them. I think strong female characters are the way to go.
Sí, yo debería decir yo que muchas gracias a Books and Books. Y bueno, next time that I go to Miami, I hope that we can all have a cafecito in the real Book and Books, en el lugar como tal, ¿verdad?
Sí, todo junto. Yeah.
Todos
That would be
juntitos.
amazing.
Encontrarnos. Muchas gracias a Books and Books también por invitarme. Really
Thanks so much for
appreciate it.
having us.
Definitely. No, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Alex, for this conversation. It was so lovely. Thank you, everyone. Remember, you can buy Death Under the Perseids underneath in the green button. We have the holidays coming right up, so get that in as soon as you can. And thank you, and have a good evening and a good night wherever
Good
you
night.
are.
Thank you, everybody.
Chao, gracias.